Hi guys, welcome to this little vlog. So I thought today I would take you around Southampton, or at least the old town of Southampton. As we all know, I am moving to Bristol. Unfortunately the house that I was supposed to be moving into actually fell through, so I'll be looking for somewhere new and I'm panicking about it. But anyway, that's not what this video is about. So I'm just going to take you around Southampton so I can see it again, and just, it's a very pretty city and I think it's very undervalued, the old town. So yeah, let's go get the bus and then I'll show you around. Not sure how much talking I can do though, because it's probably going to be super busy and loud there, so we'll see. So this here is the bar gate, and it was the main entrance into Southampton. So all of New Southampton, that part there, is outside technically the city walls, and so the walls stretched out that way and that way, and you can still see some there. I'll show you some more of the walls later. They are medieval, late medieval, and the originals were built by the Anglo-Saxons, who pretty much founded the town as we know it. That's a really interesting little tidbit. This was the main defence of Southampton coming in, and the gates were closed at night. So if you were locked out, you were locked out. Most of the city was completely flattened during the Blitz by the Nazis. So what we have now is kind of a hodgepodge of buildings, lots of 1950s buildings. The high street that I showed you just then is actually a prefab high street, and then they never really made it into anything other than that. So a lot of these buildings were supposed to be torn down and replaced, but we still have this 1950s high street. But along there we do have some older buildings, so as they blitzed everything, they used certain landmarks. So the Bargate was a landmark, and they knew that that was the heart of Southampton if they kept that there. But there are some other buildings, especially in the old town, which were kept. So yeah, we are now inside the city. So we've got lots of towers that are all along it. They were used right up into the Second World War as artillery posts. And again, this is part of the modern old town, if that makes sense. So it's lots of Georgian buildings, but the Tudor buildings would have been all inside the walls. Now this pub, I think, if I'm correct, is the pub where Jane Austen lived. I think. I haven't made that up. I've never actually been in there for... Have I? Oh, I think I have, a long time ago. But I think it's Jane Austen's pub. Not many people know that Jane Austen lived in Southampton. She actually turned 18 in Southampton. Lovely Elizabethan... Yes, it is! Lovely. So yeah. There we go. And so I'll walk you a little bit along the walls so you can see what's going on. My boots are really squeaky today. I actually got to... Oh, you can walk along them still. So when I was 18, I think, I got to come to the opening of the walls that had been restored with Phil Harding from Time Team. I can't remember how I was invited, through some archaeology thing I think, so that's fun. And then down here you can see that originally this would have been the sea down here. Hang on, you can't see my finger. All of this was the sea, and the tide came right up, well, rather the river, and the tide came right up. And it was reclaimed, I think, in the Victorian times. So our walls aren't as nice as York's walls, but they're of a similar ilk and age. But everyone remembers, like, York's walls more than they remember ours. I'm not sure you can go all down there, I'm not sure. We'll try. So yeah, this is a good point to talk about the castle. We had a very big castle. It's now a block of flats, thanks to old Oliver Cromwell. He pretty much destroyed it in the Civil War. It was pretty rotten by then anyway. Can't actually see because it's been graffitied. But yeah, so this encompassed the walls and the castle. I don't really think anyone that famous stayed there. They probably did. I think it was built by William the Conqueror, so it was pretty decent. Okay, so now actually I'm supposed to be in the sea, which is a bit mad. You see up there, you can see all the walls stretching along, and that's pretty much where they end. Oh, this is just the the garderobe tower. Trying to focus on that. Yeah, so it's where the Poe came out, and everyone loves a Poe story in history, don't they? That's what you get asked about most when you're a historian archaeologist. What about the Poe? Okay, so walking along here, I think this is a really... Oh, is it? Oh, you can't go up here. Oh, that's annoying. That used to be open. This is the Castle Watergate. So obviously this is like one of the main entrances into the castle via the river. So they're pretty impressive and they're pretty still standing, but this is really all that's left of them, which is kind of a shame, and I think you're not going to be able to see in them. Let's try. No. So this has a really interesting story. This vault here was used right up until the Second World War, and it was used by the pub that I just showed you as their air raid shelter, and it escaped being bombed, luckily, but it was also their cellars for the pub, so it was quite a good air raid, if you can have a good air raid, to get stuck, because you could just sort of continue the party down there, which was quite fun. There's loads of vaults that are around Southampton that are kind of secret. No one really knows about them, but I'll see if I can find you some. So this is actually a really good point to talk about something that not many people know. Southampton was actually the last place to be successfully invaded, and it was not in 1066. It was, in fact, in 1338. The French did pretty much take over the city for a while, and it was a little bit dicey. They didn't know if they'd take over the whole country or not. Obviously England and France didn't go on for centuries, and so this was the walls were built as they are now after that date because they were quite substantially damaged, and so these are actually the 14th century walls rather than the Anglo-Saxon walls. This was the piece of information I was trying to find at the bar gate. Not sure what the audio is going to be like down this way, but you can see here how the river came right up to the walls, and you can also see some merchants' houses there, and merchants' houses just peeking over the top, so that's where they would have come down and got their goods from the wharf. This looks really choppy actually, and then standing back, this is in a replica of a medieval cargo ship. And obviously Southampton's always been a trading town, so we've always had quite a few different nationalities and languages and colours and races here, so that's a good little point. these are some more walls, and then going around here you'll see my favourite church in Southampton, which is St Michael's, which is opposite Tudor House, which is a museum. I think it's owned by English Heritage, maybe? But it's a great museum. I haven't been in a long time, used to go in all the time there. Let's talk about St Michael's a little bit. So St Michael's Church is one of the earliest churches founded in the city, in Hampshire and possibly in the country. It's one of the earliest examples of Norman architecture. If you look carefully you can see the outline of the original church. It's that triangle there. And it was built by William the Conqueror, I think in like 1086, I believe. And then this site here was the site of the fish market. So my first archaeology project was actually about this church, and I was 10. I was 10 and I was with the Young Archaeological Society Club, whatever it was called, and we did a little mini dig, and then our findings were shown in the God's House Tower Museum, which is now closed. But there was lots of fish bones, and in fact when I did my work experience and then sort of helped out at the archaeology unit here, I was still going through soil samples of this soil and it was chock-a-block of fish bones and my eyes were swimming for days. So there's a better view of Tudor House. It's one of 3 of the main medieval and Tudor buildings that are left. Actually 4. There's 4. So walking along here, so lots of these buildings are after the war. So there was some bombing here. And even though they look not to everyone's tastes, they are really expensive to live in the old town. Lots of retirement properties around here. It's not a bad place to retire, I suppose. Oh, this was a very old example of an archaeology dig down here. Yeah, it's nearly as old as me, this dig. So what they did was uncover the walls, and you can still see them if it was cleared up. That would be nice, but Southampton is notoriously bad for not looking after their heritage, especially their archaeology. And it was just another merchant's house really, and it was attached to this one. And this used to be open. I think it's owned by English Heritage alongside Tudor House, and I think this one is Tudor Merchants Hall or Medieval Merchants Hall. I get them mixed up. I think this is Tudor though. Aha! Medieval Merchants Hall, I found the sign. And yeah, it has quite short opening times. But it's pretty nifty if you want to go in there and just see how a medieval merchant lived, basically. But it's an excellent example of medieval architecture for Southampton. Oh, and there's 2 little doves up there, how beautiful. So as we walk down here, you can see some more Victorian merchant places. So this is St John's School. Oh. But I think I'm right in saying that this school was bombed in the war, and that was their gym hall, I believe. I did some archaeology in there as well, and it was bombed, and luckily there was no gym class going on at the time. So that's another little evidence of modern archaeology, I suppose. Oh, mixed with old archaeology. And talking of archaeology, that used to be not my office because I didn't work for them, but I used to spend a lot of time in that building because that was the archaeology buildings. And the building behind me was the archaeology storage unit. But now it looks like a very fancy apartment block, so I'm not thinking it's there. I think we have moved all our stores actually. But I am going to walk down here because there's some more places I want to see, and there's also a very nice pub. Because I don't know if you can tell, but I have had a mother of all colds So I'm a little bit thirsty and I need some alcoholic medicine. So the audio here is probably going to be appalling and I apologise about that, but this was the pier for Southampton, and a funny story about that, it burnt down in the 80s and my parents were coming back on the Isle of Wight ferry and they saw it all from the ferry and they couldn't dock for ages and they were stuck on it, and my first job was on the Isle of Wight ferry. There we go. The Wall House. It's another example of 14th century medieval architecture. It was used amazingly to store wool, and then later in its life it became a museum, and it was the Maritime Museum for a long time, and then that closed and it's now up at the Sea City Museum, and today it is the Dancing Man Brewery and pub, which is where I'm sat now. And I've managed to do this whole vlog without mentioning two things that are really vital to Southampton in the 20th century, and they were the Titanic and D-Day. And so from outside these doors, the D-Day landings launched, which was obviously a pivotal day in our history. And yeah, I have some great stories about that as well, but I'll save those for another vlog probably. And then Titanic as well. It didn't set sail from here, but it did set sail from just down the road, and I am next going to take you, well, eventually take you down the most famous street that's connected to the Titanic, which is Oxford Street, which is actually where I work. So we will go there, but first of all I'm going to enjoy my little half. Another little factoid before we get to the Titanic. If you know anything about the religious wars and the religious Reformation and anything that affected Europe as a whole, then you'll know that Southampton was one of the safe points for the French Huguenots who left France after a big massacre basically, and lots of them settled in London in the Spitalfields area and became very famous for their silk, but we had a lot here as well. And so this little quite rundown garden is actually full of French plants and French herbs to sort of commemorate them and the big journey that they had to use. There's a great series or a great documentary by Amber Butchard about the French Huguenots as the first refugees. They are actually why we call refugees refugees, because it comes from the French word. And this is sort of the area that they settled in. That back there, through the gates, is Canute's Palace, and obviously it's not named after, it wasn't actually Canute's Palace. If you don't know the story of Canute, he was an Anglo-Saxon king who thought he was more powerful than God and could turn back the tide, but he couldn't. And this is apparently the site of his palace, but it's actually a medieval building. So if you remember a while back, I mentioned Southampton not being very good with their archaeology. Sorry, this is the main road, so this is probably going to be really bad. But this is actually an archaeology site. This is the wine vaults for the castle, and it has been left like this since I was born. So this has been, I think it was excavated in 89 and 90, and it's been left like this. I think people do occasionally go in there still. I can see quite a modern ladder. But it's just been left, and it's such a shame because it would be such an attraction. But who cares about that when you can have 3 Nando's and 4 Costas in one shopping centre? This is another one of the old vaults. It's locked off to the public because homeless kept using it for shelter, because we as a society cannot shelter them otherwise, which is a shame. But yeah, this is often used for art gallery things as well, which is nice. It's still being used, but it will be nice to be used a little bit more frequently. This is Winkle Street. This is a very old street with a lot of history. I think it's supposed to be haunted, but I'm not really sure. But this is the Huguenot church. You can't go in. It is only open on Sundays for worshippers, but it is one of the original Huguenot churches of England. And then you can also, I think, through there is a very nice retirement home. It's always been a retirement home, and it's where my mum wants to retire. So through here, this platform tavern is a very old pub. It used to be the pub I used to frequent with archaeology. So at the end of the street we have God's House Tower, which used to be, and still is, one of my favourite buildings in Southampton, if not my favourite building, and used to be home to the Archaeology Museum, but it has just been closed about 5 years ago, I'd say, and it's now being refurbished as another art centre, so once again it's being used, which is fun. But I used to spend a lot of time in there. This is the other extreme end of the walls. So the city itself is actually, well, the old town is actually only a mile square, I believe. So you can walk it pretty easily if you do come into Southampton. And this bit's pretty intact as well, which is great to see with all the towers still. And here, where I think it's a BT office now, this was the main friary in Southampton, and this is now called Friary House. So this is where the monks lived, and when this was built there was a big archaeology dig there as well, but that was before I was born. What does that sign say? Some more toilets. I mean, Southampton is pretty naff at doing its heritage, but it really likes to point out where the toilets are. Well, old toilets, please don't piss there now, please. So we're nearly at the end, I promise. I'm now going to actually finally branch into the Titanic stuff, so if you have come here just for Titanic, I hope you've stuck around and learned something else and not just skipped forward to this part. We're sat in the park. Southampton has like the most green spaces outside of London or something like that, and we're outside the city walls now, so technically we're not in our old town, but I couldn't really not do a vlog down this part of town and not talk about the Titanic. Just over there though, before I do start talking, is the world's oldest bowling green, which is 14th century as well. Fantastic little fact. So I'm going to take you on a little walk. I'm going to point out the places that the movie references, or kind of references, because I didn't actually film any of the movie here, and even though they're not real, I think that's what most people come here looking for, so I will show you where those are. That's the bus. And yeah, and then I probably have a couple more pints or halves, and then we'll go home. This is Southwestern House. It's now luxury apartments, but it was built for cruise liner passengers and passengers for transatlantic journeys. But it's here that Rose would have stayed, basically. So it was built in 1872, so it was well standing when the Titanic set sail, and lots and lots of documents of first class passengers having their last night on terra firma here, so that's quite sad. And then it got changed into luxury apartments about 10 years ago, I think. It's a beautiful building. So here we're coming on to Oxford Street. This is a very nice part of town, and it's got lots of restaurants and bars. It's where I work. We'll try and go and work if I can. It might not be open yet by the time I go home, I don't know. But now I'm going to take you in the Grapes, and the Grapes is where, if it was real, Jack won his tickets for the Titanic. So around Southampton we do have these little signs which just say who lived in the house if someone from the Titanic lived there. and they're dotted around, but if you look over here at these 60s blocks of flats, you'll see that this area was actually where lots of the back-to-backs were for the poorer side of town. It's actually where my granddad was born and grew up, but actually let's go this way. Like with so many things in Southampton, they were all bombed during the war, and so lots of them were torn down. So lots of the houses where the victims of the disasters lived have now gone, and they've been replaced with these blocks. There is a map on the Daily Echo website which shows 1912 Southampton and documents where everyone lived, survivors and victims. So if I can find that, I will link it somewhere, probably in the description bar. So we're heading back up towards the High Street now, and you can see there the spire of St Michael's Church that we were at earlier. And then this is our version of the bombed out church, Holyrood Church. So when I lived in Liverpool, we had a bombed out church as well, both bombed during the war. This one, I think it had some fire before, I think in the 19th century, and then finally the Nazis sort of destroyed it with an incendiary bomb, I believe. So let's just pop in there a little bit. I think there's a little plaque that says it somewhere, some history. Yeah, so there was a fire in 1837, and some men died, which is really sad. And if we go in now, it's a memorial for the Navy and the Merchant Navy.
There wasn't a family in the whole of that area that never had anybody associated with that ship. Fathers and sons and uncles and grandsons and all this sort of thing, to be on a great Titanic, you see.
One final little stop. This is where Jane Austen celebrated her 18th birthday. So this is the Dolphin Hotel. Apparently, again, very haunted. And it's still a hotel. And so that's where she went when she wasn't staying just over there. So yeah, I'm just gonna probably go and get a little bit of a snack and then go home and finish this because it's really long. Hiya, so it's the next day. I kind of always finish my travel vlogs really abruptly, and I'm sorry about that. So I hope you enjoyed that little walk around Southampton Old Town. This vlog is probably really long. I haven't even started looking at the footage, but I hope you enjoyed it. So if you did, you need to give me a thumbs up, a comment down below about your favourite period of history. What did you learn from Southampton? And subscribe to see more videos like this. Probably every Friday. I've still yet to work out my new schedule. Until next time, guys. Bye bye.